living without hope,
when I'm living without hope,
when my heart is hurt and my mind
I hear you
confused,
calling me,
I hear you calling me. When I'm living on the ropes,
when I'm living on the ropes,
going down for the third time,
I hear you calling me,
I hear you calling me. You say, why be afraid of false surge and wait? They're just impermanent states of mind. And at once I'm free of false identity, because the master calls from afar. I hear you calling me, calling me. I hear you calling me, calling me.
There is a true unbinding of joy to be received.
When stainless vision rises and we stand undeceived,
Embracing circumstances, our hearts will be relieved.
this is the end of suffering.
Feel like my eyes haven't seen much. Feel like my words don't mean much. From the dirt on the ground that my knees touch, to the sky up above when I reach up, I hear a voice from the distance, and it's calling me to witness. If it's a part of you, it's a part of me. I hear you calling me,
Calling me, calling me, calling me, calling me. If you wanna be saved,
if you wanna be saved
from your self-destructive ways, listen to the master.
calling,
Open to the master.
calling,
Calling, calling,
Open to the
calling, calling,
calling to the
calling, calling,
calling.
calling.
Okay, I feel my encouragement coming. Today I wanted to talk about time. Because we're always thinking in terms of the three times, the past, the present, and the future. And then we spout Buddhist jargon and say, you know, the past is gone and the future is not come, and only the present moment is what's important. And all of that sounds good, but do we really even know what we're talking about when we talk about time? Time is like a concept that we have, and we use this concept to create a current reality for ourselves. So what happens is when we start moving towards on the path to awakening, when prajna starts to gain a toehold, something happens with the time, with the sense of time and the understanding of time and the utilization of time for us. So if that's happening to you today, I want to let you know that you are right where you should be. And I'm going to try to drop a few tips from Buddha Master on how to allow this dissolving of time, or how to get a different definition for time that will help you to understand the true nature of reality. I'm going to read from chapter, I don't know what chapter this is, but it's section 13 on time. We will analyze the principles of the emptiness of the three times and the essential emptiness of the three aspects of giving. We won't get to giving. Learning Buddha Dharma requires understanding the principle that the aspects of giving are in essence empty, and time is a false name for the continuous, uninterrupted arising and passing away of successive events and things. Time is a false name for the continuous, uninterrupted arising and passing away of successive events and things. Without this continuity of successive events and things, there would be no such thing in our understanding as time. Disciples, you should make a good effort to comprehend what I'm saying here. You should understand for yourself what I am saying. I think you can cut that off anymore. Without the continuous arising and passing away of successive events and things, there would be no such thing as time for you. We discovered the passage of time as morning progresses to evening, year progresses to the next year. There is the continuous arising and passing away of successive events and things on a coarse scale and also on a fine scale. That is what produces time, this process of arising and passing away is continuous, it's successive, and without interruption. I'm sorry, am I going?
Your phone is somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Down here. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so I wear a pump that rings when it's out of insulin, it beeps. So it beeped yesterday here. And I didn't have my thingy that turns it off and on. So I pull off the pump, put it outside because it'll just keep ringing louder and louder until you deactivate it. And I said, when I get home, I'll deactivate it. So I get home and I try to and I thought I deactivated it and I put on a new one. And it beeped all night here. Because they have to be close to each other to deactivate. And I don't know how long that.
I just smashed it right on our way in right now.
You smashed it.
I
Okay.
successfully
Beat
killed
it to
it.
death. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, they're serious about that alarm. They're serious. So sorry about that.
Did our neighbor across the street heard it?
Yeah, the neighbor called
Did he?
and it rang all night. So this is what I want us to kind of talk about and think about and share about. When you hear things and we're talking about when the last thought has arisen and the next thought has ceased and the next thought has not arisen, talking about that gap, that space there. And we're trying to get into that space, but you really can't get into a space if you don't have an understanding of how the space of emptiness or timelessness, what its relationship is to how you understand the movement of life. And so we use time in an inappropriate way and misuse the concept of time to try to understand a spiritual principle, and we get all confused when a correct understanding of it will allow the realization of the timelessness of every moment to be made manifest and visible to us, to be knowable to us. And so we try to put these spiritual concepts into our ordinary thinking, and then they can't work. We can't penetrate to the truth of them because we're using a false construct, as our apparatus for analyzing and trying to do a quote, spiritual thing that will have benefit for it. So the first thing I want to say is that there's no point in talking about a gap between the spaces, because if you look at it, time is tied to memory, and memory is tied to the 5 aggregates as real. So if you want to really understand and be able to enter into that gap, you can't struggle and try to get into it. It takes a crumbling, a dissolution of a certain concept we hold, and one of them is the reality of time. Time being connected, that which through thought connects successive events. Connects successive events, and that creates sequence and time. So if we are trying to approach our spiritual practice from the same place that we approach how we live in everyday life, we can't make that transition. We can't make that leap. That's why you have the things like you have, retreats, times of stepping away, times of not working, times of not using the phone, times of not checking your schedule, times of, all of this to try to allow the memory that constantly connects the dots based on our false impression and assumption that everything that we see here through the lens of the senses is real. There's no way to make any progress. We just do some exercises. We just do some things. We follow a methodology for the weekend or the day-long retreat, and then we just step right back into our world because we never left our world. And then we say, well, I didn't get much out of that. Or sometimes we do, and we come back like disoriented because now we're thrust back into a sense of time. So the challenge for us is to not lose the fundamental experience of timelessness when it arises, so that one can go back to the awareness of it again and again, and you'll find that it begins to expand. It not only expands, it covers over. It's like walking on a lake of ice, and then suddenly water is poured onto the lake of ice, and the ice becomes slippery. That's how it is when you touch some of these greater truths and then go back to your ordinary thinking. It becomes slippery. It becomes difficult for you to make sense of it all, and so then we just default so that we don't sprain our ankle. We think this is too much. We just default. But my encouragement today is to not default, to not let the mind that takes phenomena, including oneself, as real and solid. And when you say permanent, everybody knows we're not permanent. Everybody knows that there's going to be death, just not today. And so we have a sense of being permanent in the moment, but we're really not even permanent in the moment. I mean, there is no permanent part of Pannavati existing at all. As a matter of fact, I think she's just a host for a kabillion other beings. You know, I'm more like the earth, you know, the earth, Mother Earth, like the earth, than I am like a person. I mean, a person is a totally contrived thing. You know, if we really look at it, if we really call ourselves scientists in some regard and rational in some regard, you know, then we realize that 90% of us is not us, but it's other living things, viruses and bacteria and whatever else they have discovered and what they haven't discovered. So I'm just a host, a very little bit of human being, even in me. Or we need to redefine what human being is. Maybe that's what it is. But right now, we have an understanding of this permanent I that goes through things, you know, according to a time frame, and we have past, present, and future. All those notions, when I say have to be done away with, I don't mean that conventionally we don't operate on, but it's like playing a chord on the piano. Just because I play the C doesn't mean I can't play the E. I can add a G to it and I'll have a triad and I can play all of them at one time. And each one has, you know, provides, there is an overtone that connects them all, you know, but I don't just have to go ding, 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 just playing one note. And it's so easy for us to be able to be um, multifaceted in our application in these uh, um, ordinary worldly ways, but it's so difficult for us to hold more than one concept when we get to spiritual things. You know, it's got to be like this, or it's got to be this, or but through every activity of our walking and waking life, we see the multiplicity of things. We see, I won't even say the duality. You know, it's like I can be wife, I can be mother, I can be teacher, I can be any number of things. And one does not um, take away from the other. One does not make the other not true. But when we get down to trying to understand spiritual concepts, suddenly we are so confused. We don't have the capacity to hold more than one view. You're like, why is that? If we could easily do that, we could penetrate this whole messy misunderstanding of the nature of reality, you know, and we could, like serve out. I say serve out our sentence. I mean, in terms of cause and effect, we could do this, and we could do this without suffering because it would just make so much sense to us. And so we struggle with spiritual principles that are no more than just the uh, ordinary principles of the universe, like how the universe is organized. By the same token, if I didn't think of myself as only an individuated entity, you know, then I could more easily understand the connection between me and others. But I have difficulty with that because I have one supreme thought, which is that I am an individual. All this other stuff we talk about, we just talk about that. But I don't really feel that way when it gets down to it. And that's the shift that has to occur. And it does not occur without us continually seeing the truth of that. So we spend 10% of our time embracing postulations, and spiritual theories, but we spend 90% of our time dressing them down and going back to and abiding in our ordinary view. And yet we look for a certain attainment. It's like having glasses, but nothing's really in them, and putting them on and thinking that we're gonna see better. There's nothing in them. There's no medicine in them. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because sometimes when we come to know something, there's a great hindrance of knowledge, a great hindrance in knowing things, because it locks us into a view that becomes very, very difficult to destroy. That's why I go around all the time saying, I know nothing. Because that leaves some space for a different angle to be presented, which might mean I might have to adjust what I just said yesterday, But because I'm not vested in being right, and I'm not too proud to correct my understanding, then I can get more. I'm saying I, meaning anyone. But what hinders us is when we get locked into views that we have, and we have to just find a space for what we're learning and what we're perceiving. We have to find a space for it to fit in there. I cannot do the Rubik's Cube thing. I've never, ever once got anywhere close to the Rubik's, getting all the colors on one side. I just can't do it. And it's not that I don't think it can be done, I've seen somebody do it, but we have to really look closely to see how and if we are actually assimilating what we say we understand. We have to look really, really deeply and say, do we really, when I say believe, I don't mean like blind belief, but do we really see the truth of what we're saying? And it's better to say, I don't. You don't have to say it to me or somebody else, but I'm talking now about being honest with oneself if one wants a kind of insight and awareness that penetrates ordinary appearances. These are ordinary appearances. These are called false appearances. Why? Because they're all tied up in the 5 aggregates. And we might have to hear this 1,000 times. It doesn't matter if we need to hear it 1,000 times. Maybe 1,001 will be the time that our understanding breaks open. And then we see it. And it's like, how could I not have understood that? It's plain as the nose on my face. And then somebody says, well, what face? False in that sense doesn't mean not that the phenomena is not actually appearing. It just speaks of the false perception of permanence that's tied in to a concept of time, one thought linking to another, that produces a picture, a story, a drama, and we live out this dream. To tell you the truth, right now, I don't know if I'm dreaming now and what I was doing a few hours ago in my dream, whether that's my real world and that this might be the dream. I mean, actually, so many of you crisscross and you're in that. I mean, like, 'cause I'm with you guys all the time.
Sorry.
You know? So when I say bye, you know, it doesn't always mean for me, like I'll see you on next Wednesday or next Sunday, because at night when I go into a dream state, we're off many times in another world or this world at another time doing things. I'm watching the dream, so I know that I'm dreaming, or what we call dreaming, but I could be awake then and dreaming now. I don't really know. Do you?
I think I do.
I know you do.
And you're working on it, right?
No, I'm not. I'm not working on it for you, but I'm working on it for me, you know. Oh, and we say, oh, well, of course we know this and we know that. But then we really, when you think about it, our whole life is a series of stringing along memories. I mean, it really is. It's stringing along memories. That's what thought is. And that's why he talks about thoughts having, thoughts creating a false reality, and the dropping, the stilling of all thoughts is what brings us to the central pinpoint of reality. And when it's like a top, I don't know that they make them anymore, but when I was a baby, and the top spins, you know, and it's whirling round and round and round, and it's moving all over the floor. But the thing is, at the point where the top meets the floor, there is not movement there. It's the outer part that's moving. But the closer you get to the center, the stiller it gets. Let's say that you've been moving around and you're busy, and you can feel the energy of movement, or you're even talking and suddenly you're silent. And in that nanosecond of silence, there's like, can you experience it? It's just like a burst of, it's like a bomb. It's like the energy that you feel at that moment of silence that you touched a part of in your chatter, or you experience, we used to play games like musical chairs, and the music would go and everybody's walking around the chair, and the chairs and the music stops, and you suddenly try to sit in a chair. You know, the stopping of the motion creates a kind of presence or awareness that is pregnant with, it's pregnant with potential, and it has something that we can detect, that we can recognize as unleashed.
Thinking of the song, "No One Dare Disturb the Sound of Silence."
Mm. Mm-hmm. And it's from that place that things can go in any direction. If I'm heading north and I just stop, I'm not going east, I'm not going west, I'm not going south, and I've stopped going north, and suddenly in that stillness, there is the anxiety and the stress of movement is dissolved. It's kind of like, I'm trying to give you some kind of likes so that you can begin to notice it throughout the day. There are times that we stop, but we don't know that we've stopped because our memory is not tying those times together. It's tying together the movements that we make. It's kind of like saying, I can't get it. I can't get it. I can't get it. But if I thought I can get it, I don't have it now, but I can get it. I can get it. Then those thoughts will link together. And before we know it, there will be something that is accomplished and we won't need the thoughts linking together. It will be the spontaneous manifestation because of the capture and the stilling of the energy that escapes through the movement of thought. When we go on a retreat or when we take time out at home, it's a little bit difficult for us to do it at home if we're just not that committed to it. If we are, I was thinking, I got a sort of like a message, a signal to do a dark retreat. That was the first signal that came. So I didn't know really what a dark retreat is, you know. But it was while I was doing my, my practice, my Dharma practice, and it came up dark retreat. So I said, well, I don't know what that is. So I looked it up, and well, I still don't exactly know what it is. It's just that you're in the dark, and it's sort of like deprivation. And who knows what kinds of scary things arise in the mind when the mind doesn't have anything to play with out here, And so, but anyway, I looked it up and I was saying, okay, I'm going to go on a dark retreat, but I have to go to a certain place. I need to go to a place where there are no bugs. That's number one, because I will probably freak out, just me, if I was in the dark for 2 days and something crawled up on me. I would have, my mind would go in all kinds of directions. I just know me. I mean, it's going for a bit of it, not to freak me out. It's going for a bit of stuff. Okay, first there can't be any bugs, no ants, no roaches, no nothing. You gotta be very clean place. And then I wondered, how you're in the dark. After a while, your eyes get accustomed to the dark, and the dark is not that dark. So, because my next question was, how will I get to the bathroom? And I need to make sure that it's a place where I won't stumble because I'm not as stable as I used to be. So everything has to be level. And so I came up with all these requirements I need for to do a dark retreat. And then it came to me what I was doing. So maybe it wasn't even so much about doing a dark retreat, but my concept of what a dark retreat is actually engaged in it, not reading about it, but engaged in it, because I don't know what this mind would do and where this mind would go. And so before I could even finish my investigation on dark retreat, I had already fashioned in my mind what dark retreat was for me, and what things I needed to have in place. And so forth. When I finished the whole exercise, I was talking to Busita about it. She said, I think that's a good idea, Venerable. And she said, I lived in Kay's basement for 3 years, and it's in her bedroom. And it was like absolutely, almost wonderful, actually. It was absolutely dark in there. When I came upstairs, I'm still working out how to sleep with light and dark, But down there, I had no problems at all. It was so wonderful. I could sleep. And when I was awake, you know. And I said, I don't have to. We looked at the price of them. It's like $2,000 for 3 days or something like that. I'm like, what the hell? I just go downstairs in the basement of the Hermitage and close the door. I could do a dark retreat right there. I didn't call it dark retreat when I was living in that room, but now it's this thing, And and I started thinking about that, and I said, I think that's the whole point. He's saying, look at the nature of your mind, and look at how you assess things through a constant time together of thoughts. That's what creates your reality. And so we have to necessarily go through a time of loosening and dissolving our fixedness upon events. And if we do, we will see a shift in our concept of reality, because it's tied into time in events from moment to moment, or week to week, or year to year. And it forms the basis of our lens for how we see and understand the world. And that's why we don't go someplace else. There's not another shore. The other shore is none other than this shore. But the whole appearance shifts, so we can be right here. We don't have to go anywhere, because the shift takes place in the mind not latching down to what it saw or what it understood yesterday, last year, even a minute ago. So you say, well, that might sound like a person who's like mentally ill or something, or mentally deranged. Some faculties you need for functioning in certain environments. But those faculties won't help you in other environments. So when one in the beginning is doing the spiritual practice, it's kind of separated out. But as one continues to do it, it integrates in a certain way. But if we lean too heavily to the ordinary side, then it falls out of solution and we just become ordinary. If we lean too heavily, to the spiritual side, we lose our basis of form is none other than emptiness. Emptiness is none other than form. And so we go off on the other end. I think all my life, I have been extreme on an outer spiritual side. Easy to forsake something in the world for a spiritual aim or spiritual goal, because that was more real and desirous for me. But now I'm having to come back to the center. I'm having to come to the middle way that holds an extreme idea about spirituality. I'm not going to use the emptiness today. An extreme idea about ultimate spirituality. I'm going to have to bring that closer to the middle. But for the one who has an extreme idea about existence in this world and this life, they might have to come towards me this way. And so each person has to know what their angle or degree of leaning is. Otherwise, you can't, and you really can't make a move. Like we want to move, we want to grow, we want to run across to the, but you can't make a move if you don't know what your angling is. To even take one step, you can fall off the tightrope. If you don't know that you're leaning, whatever, at a 45-degree angle to the east, and you got to bring it up 15 degrees to the west to be able to balance on one foot and move forward with the other foot. It's easy for me to understand, especially as I get older and my balance is not so good. It's not just a matter of picking up your feet and you're not even thinking about it, no more of that. I have to think carefully when I pick my foot up, how I'm balanced, where my body is in relationship to my leg and my foot. If you're young, you don't know what I'm talking about, but you won't always be young. Or if you like Suka here.
There we go.
But for most of us, not Suka, but for most of us, our balance as we age or have neuropathy, so I can't feel my whole foot. So I don't know where part of my foot is, but I don't know where part of it is, So I have to be more careful, but I'd have to know, because without knowing, I will fall. And so the Buddha said that life is like a tightrope. It's like this. We're having to walk in these ways, and we have to really know where we're walking, where we're stepping. And so this is one of the hardest things to reconcile, this notion of time. And I'm not saying that we throw out time or we don't consider time, but just considering that without any concept or without any memory or without any thought connecting to another thought, there would be no such thing as what we call time. And just the notion that that is possible to know, and the sense of freedom, because I personally feel all bound up. But what I'm bound by is my concept of time. And just relaxing into that notion. I don't have to go and say time's not real, time's not real, time's not real. But just noticing how time is not stable and fixed, depending on what we're doing, and depending on what we're thinking about. it will begin to put us into a place that becomes more expansive than the picture we've drawn or the storyline of the drama that we have come up with. And as we get skillful in abiding in this kind of free space and free zone, we start to see how it benefits us. For instance, when something is going not so good for me, or if something's not going so good for someone, they have a capacity to shorten the length of time that one suffers from that view. And when there is something that someone enjoys, they have the capacity to extend that time. And in that way, I master and handle my own amount of suffering. So we can choose to suffer for a nanosecond over something that's happening, or we can choose to suffer for a long time. And it depends on how we connect the dots of memory. And that's a exercise that we can do every day. We can take something that's causing us to suffer, something that we have angst over, something that we are that's constantly coming to our mind. Can we see how we are causing our own suffering with that? Another way is, I was watching a Buddhist film yesterday, and it was on Cambodia and Angkor Wat, and and all of that. But I looked at this magnificent civilization. But if I look at a Cambodian today, and I compare them, like say, to an American, I mean, just as a group of people, then I would think that Americans are superior to Cambodians. And I was watching that history, and I was just so moved, and it completely changed my level of respect. I mean, it just flip-flopped it. And I felt like we were adolescents playing grown-up and not doing a good job. When I just looked culturally at the history and the facilities that they built, the temples, the lifestyle of the people, like I think it was around 500 BC, AD when they built Angkor Wat. But you could just see that it was a high society at the top of its game, So when I looked at them and thought, like, how the mighty have fallen, then I looked at us and I said, we ain't even mighty, And if they can fall, we can fall. And that I don't know of ancient society that did not fall, that has remained the same. But yet we, at least for our lifetime and our children's lifetime, we want it to remain the same. I said, how immature such a thought is. It really is. Better to know what time it is. That's the best way, to prepare, to care. But the fear part of it is not useful at all. Because it does make us impotent and not able to do what we could do to be prepared. And if we don't, then we suffer the consequences of not being prepared. It's not even a personal thing. It's not personal. It's just cause and effect. It's just karma.
I love your food.
No worries, yeah.
And so this Dharma path that we're on, it's not to hear goody things about how to maintain the status quo, how to protect ourselves from the law of karma, because it's not possible to do that. And yet we don't have to be afraid. I look at young men who, for the sake of saving their countrymen, their families, their children, how they enlist and go to war, willing to give up their lives for their country. Ordinary people do that. Ordinary people. So if they have that much courage to lay their own life on the line for strangers, how much courage should we have? If this Dharma is worth anything. That's why we have to, it's these ways that we know how much it's worth to us. When we're going through vicissitudes, when we're in places of where we don't determine the outcome. One time somebody asked the Buddha something, and he said, I'm not going to stay with this group if you can't, answer this question for me in a way that I can accept. He said, I never said I would. I never said I would. I'm just going to tell you that the nature of things, and you decide what you will do with that. Whether you will allow it to open up your eyes to move you to that fearless state, or whether you drown in your fears and in your sorrows. Just make sure that you're doing what you know that you can do. Somebody is good at counseling, then they can offer counseling. Was talking with someone, and he was saying just so many things have happened, and one behind the other, one catastrophe after the other, that it has triggered PTSD for him. He says, I know nothing's happening, but it's just, it was the flood, and then it was the fire, and then it was, the ice storm, and then the landslide, and now I'm like wired, I'm triggered, And for that one, a counselor, somebody said, oh, I have someone who can help you, I can refer you. They can easily help you overcome that. So we don't have to live with things forever, forever, forever. We need to get the help that we need. You know, for me, of course, I mean, I might think I'm crazy, but for me, my sister was bipolar, and I think the rest of the family was too. They just weren't diagnosed. But just about everybody in my family had some kind of crazy going on, right? So they took me to a doctor, and he said, "You are also bipolar." Said the difference is your sister, she has these swings every 6 months. He said, but you have them several times a day. So, but what I decided was I was doing my spiritual practice, and I wanted to be different than I was. You know, you just didn't know which way I was going to be on any given day. Now I'm pretty much the same, not 100, but I'm pretty much what you see is what you got. But I read one scripture that said God is a heart fixer and a mind regulator. I said, that's what I want. I want this medicine that can fix my heart and regulate my mind. And that's what I did instead of taking medicine. And my sister died being bipolar, and her life wasn't that good. But I've had a good life. And I don't think I don't know, you can let me know after Donald, if I'm bipolar or not. But one thing I know is that I never went off the rails, because whenever I feel that I'm in a space where my understanding is not fruitful, where I can't get a clamp on myself, I go now to the Dharma, and it saves me, or it protects me, or it shows me clearly how to untie a knot, or why I need to accept this. It's futile to expect or try for anything else. I can see how I don't need to have a certain thing to be happy. I can see how, whatever my question is, I can find an answer in the Dharma. But if I needed something, I go get it. So this is part of taking care of and handling our own problems. And I look at my behavior to let me know what I need to take care of. For instance, one sutta says that, all living beings have been our mother. Or you could think of it like all living beings are our mother. If you can't get to all living beings, just go to all human beings are our mother, And I would think of how I would, not only how I would want to treat my mother, but what I would do to a person who was treating my mother in a certain way. And am I that person? Or my friend? Am I taking advantage of my friend's kindness? Or that's the only question I have to ask. And then I know what kind of correction I need to make. I might not be able to make the correction today, but first is a mind that turns towards a different conduct. And this is our daily cultivation, and how, if you do it and don't just lean on your rituals, or don't just lean on your studying the book, or don't just lean, on watching a good Dharma movie, but asking oneself these tough questions will uproot our fear and our fundamental ignorance. And it lets me know which memories I need to untie or disconnect from. And this is a full-time job. Sometimes I'm so tired at the end of the day because all day you don't have to try to see it. You can't not see it. You can't not see it. And if you're not prepared, you will definitely beat yourself up because you think, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. But one has to think this is the process of unbinding. You can loose and set free anything that you don't recognize as being bound. So one by one, we loose the cords that bind us. And as we're loosing the cords, we're actually loosing memories, seeing their false appearance because they are connected to the 5 aggregates. And understanding that the 5 aggregates are illusory, impermanent, contrived, a drama created. And the culprit is memory or thought. And where that will lead you is that you can change your thought. You might not be able to do it in the beginning, but as you keep going, you'll be able to change your thoughts. Same way we tell our children, they mad, tell them, well, you better get happy within 5 minutes. I mean, and we expect them to obey. We expect them to be able to do it, right? We do. But we'll find that we can do this. And then there will not be anything that we can handle. That's how the fearlessness arises. That's how the capacity to self-correct, makes its appearance. And when that happens, we really feel it feels like a presence at first, but then it shifts from being a presence to a kind of power. Not in a force kind of power, but more like an ever-ready battery kind of power. It's always available, always available. And we can switch it on at any time. Then after a while, it becomes one of those, like you don't have to recharge them. It's self-generating. It becomes self-generating. And then we're in a place that we can support other people. We can help other people. This is where our joy will come from. Maybe it didn't sound that joyful, but I'll tell you the truth. It is where your joy comes from. Because your confidence, you're confident that you're walking out your salvation. You're confident that it is available to you. Your freedom, your liberty is available to you. You're confident that you not only have something to help others, to hold others, to sustain others, to give to others, but that you can actually also give it, and it becomes the central aspect of your life. a Buddha has nothing that they hold for themselves. Nothing. Finding out what that really means. Doesn't mean go give away everything you have and live on the street and somebody gotta feed you. That's not what it means. Find out what it means. Anybody want to share? Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking about laryngitis. And it really made an impact on me, this idea of the sequence of arisings and passing. What the mind does with that, it strings together these arisings and passings away. And therefore creates, this creates our reality, including sense of time, part of that. And it's unconscious. Now, it seems to be part of our hardwiring, but we can become conscious of it and interrupt that string to really be present to the uniqueness of what's happening right now. My experience, my memories of laryngitis strung together is that the more I talk, the worse it gets, until any semblance of voice that I started out with is reduced to zero in a matter of minutes. I mean, this is amazing. To me, this is an example of interrupting that sequence and not being dictated to by the effects of stringing the events together. Yeah, I don't think you have a trace of laryngitis now.
Don't feel like it right now.
No.
We've experienced this before. When you come in so weak that you didn't know if we could even get you to the chair. And then you sit there and come back.
Truth coming through heals the giver as well as the receiver. But the interruption of that linkage is
right.
Right. What's really made an impact on me for the first time. Yeah, I know about those other things.
It frees up a capacity to be in another state. So if that's a really good point about how we hold on and string along these thoughts. And you say unconscious, I think the mind does, I mean, the brain, I think the brain does do that. But beginning to recognize that there is, I won't say we have, that there is another mind that is not subject to these things. Yeah, and but it takes some effort. It actually also takes some confidence and, some faith that it operates, that it actually exists and that it can operate, but if we keep defaulting to, the string of thoughts that's tied into our individuated and disconnected from the whole thinking, then we can't function at a certain state that we absolutely can function in.
Like there's a higher operating system that's also hardwired, but it has to be activated through cultivation.
Yes.
And once it's activated, it's not in contradiction to the lower stuff. It's just superordinate to it.
Yeah. Pretty cute.
Just realizing how you mentioned confidence and I'll add contentment. When we're in a state of confidence or contentment, how little we actually pay attention to time.
Mhm.
We can lose track of time when we're content, when we're right. And this has to do with this sort of notion of I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And so having to do that makes time, it's like, when is this going to be over? And so we're suffering through
Mhm.
this concept of time, but it comes back to, again, it's only four noble truths. And one of them is that, this attention to self and what we want, what we don't want, is what causes us suffering. And time is a part of that.
Mhm.
And once we get our eyes off ourselves and we're simply content to do whatever, it could take all day, it doesn't matter. We're not worried about time. Time's not a factor.
Mhm. Mhm. And that can be from the long end or from the short end. So the next time that I come in and I have laryngitis or something, and I say to Joe, you gotta just give Dom today because I'm hoarse. I don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to prepare. I said, well, you have to do it because the Lucida will like just, she'll just fall apart if I come in, you know. And so I'm up there wrestling with Joe upstairs, and finally I said, okay, Joe, I'll just start. And then you just have to be prepared if I point to you, if this becomes too annoying to people.
Thank you,
And
Joe.
then,
Thank you for your suffering.
and then, so if you get a chance, just, it takes a bit to get this thing about time,
Yeah.
it's, yes.
I remember when I was young, 5 or 6 years old. A summer day never ended. I didn't have things that had to get done. I didn't have places to be. The
Mm.
summer days just never ended. That experience doesn't happen anymore. Maybe a little bit when we're with our grandson. But yeah, I've always enjoyed reflecting back on those summer days when I was young.
I remember them too, like, we were ready for September, we went to school in September. By the end of the summer, we were ready to go back to school, because we wanted something to fill our day. But yeah, it's really true, and on this journey, it doesn't mean you'll do less things or you have to like cut down on the things you'll do, but like you'll lose the sense of timing in them. They won't take up 15 minutes, 1 hour. And I don't know, when the time construct starts to disappear, a lot of other things disappear too, because I think it's tied in some kind of way to time and space. So it's tied into distance. It's tied, I think it's possible, maybe not in exactly this way, but I think it's possible to be in parallel realities. I really do. I'm not talking about wake and sleep. I'm talking about, I know nothing about that. I don't have any scientific basis that I'm researching about that, but by my own living experience, I'm knowing in a different way that it's not all logically laid out in the way that my thinking mind has laid out what is reality. That much I can acknowledge. You know, I might not know what it is, but I now know what it is not. It's not that. And I want to know what it is, you know? I want to know. I fall into a time warp around 12:40. And from 12:40, from 12 to 12:40, the time moves like, fairly slow for me. And when it becomes 12:40, then I don't know, the next 40 minutes just kind of goes like that. And I'm watching the clock and it's still moving like that because I say I'm gonna finish at 1 today. And next thing I know, it's 1:20. But it's curious. Just pay attention and notice. It'll also let you know what things you have aversion to, and what things you're really okay with. You start to know yourself as you observe how time moves in your life and what things are attached to by a thought. But whatever thought is present, no, it's not that thought. It's what that thought is linked to. Yeah. Look there to free this up. Yes, Nancy.
I was recalling, when I was in college, I was able, I had finished in 3.5 years, and because I did summer schools, and my dad, bless him, said I planned on paying for 4 years, go ahead and take some stuff, because I really had double majored, and I was always very intense. And so I took a photography class. It was my only art class in college, and I can remember it was all black and white. You developed your own film and all that kind of stuff in the dark room. And I went in after breakfast and was in absolute shock when I missed dinner when I came out. And there was no hunger. There was no anything except the flow of the process and not knowing. In photography, I had no linkage of experience to what was going to be next. So there wasn't, it was all new. And so for me to try and live now as if everything is going to be new and not what my expectation is of the limitations of that opens up an awful lot of potential for me to be in a different way.
Isn't it marvelous?
Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you. May the merit from today's Dharma be dedicated to all beings everywhere, including those in our bodies, extending to the depths of the universe. May we abide in non-differentiating generosity and do all things with ultimate bodhicitta, for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Could you close us out with homage to Baba Prasadha? Just chanting. In
Just the
transcript, yeah.
Om Vajrasattva Samaya Maya Palaya Vajrasattva Tenapatishta Trinama Bhava Satoshima Bhava Saposhima Bhava Anurakama Bhava Sarvasiddhame Vyacha Sarva Karma Suchame Chidam Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarvatithagata Vajramame Muncha Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Kali